Welcome. Hobo Rider with you again here in Southeast Asia. Currently we're in Vietnam, but we're off to another journey, and this one's going to take us to South America. We'll fly into Santiago, Chile, or I'll buy a new motorcycle, a Royal Enfield Himalayan. From there we're going to start heading south all the way down to the tip of South America. Tierra del Fuego is the plan. From there, who knows where we're going to go. But as most of you adventure riders know, plans consistently change. So with that, I hope you'll follow along the journey, along with Hobo Rider and Miss Chili Pepper, and we're going to be looking back at you another time. Thank you very much, and look forward to seeing you on the trip. Well, Chili Pepper gets tied down for the first time on her first ferry ride. And it's my first ferry ride in the big country of Chile, so here we go, and let's hope for the best. I just got off the ferry and found a place where I'm going to camp for tonight. So the tent is set up, and now I'm going to run into town and get a cup of coffee and see if I can get something to eat. If not, I'll just have to make something. Okay, so this is my breakfast. Huevos, which is eggs, and a couple muffins. And then I have my coffee, which is with hot leche, which is milk. And then you add instant coffee to that, and you have coffee with leche, or leche coffee. So, very, very cool. I actually get breakfast today. Well, it's still raining, so we're going to give it a go. It's supposed to be some really difficult road up ahead. So we'll try. Worst comes to worst, I guess we can turn around. But anyhow, welcome to Patagonia in the rain. And thank you very much, Miss Chili Pepper, because I'll tell you what, I could not believe how this bike performed. I mean, this was just the ugliest stuff that you ever really want to get into on a motorcycle, at least as far as I'm concerned. And it chugged right up this stuff, hairpin 180-degree turns and stuff that was all I could do to stay upright. But, you know, I might be getting a little too old for that kind of stuff, so... Anyhow, there's Chili Pepper. What a great bike she's been so far. Well, we actually made it, the first trip over the Andes Mountain Range. And for me, it was definitely way above my skill level. But I learned a lot and I got here. So me and Chili Pepper made it onto the other side. And I'm sure there's going to be more of this, but hopefully not in the rain. Hobo Rider back at you. Oh my God, this is incredible. Okay folks, this is the Andes Mountain Range, and this is the mountain range that I crossed over. Incredible. Not that I want to do it again, but nonetheless, it is absolutely stunning. Hello, Hobo Rider back with you again. And I'm going to have at the end of some of these episodes, I'm going to have another little part of it that's going to be called tidbits. And the purpose of that is to possibly answer some of the questions that you might have, or some of the issues that I had and I'd like to be able to share with you. And maybe that'll make your trip a little bit easier, maybe make your research a little bit easier. With that, let's get started on that. All right, back with you. The first thing that I want to talk about is why the choice of Santiago for my motorcycle trip in South America. I looked at several different countries, but I narrowed it down to Colombia and Chile. So I opted to go with Santiago, Chile, because I figured that something like that would have many more opportunities as far as motorcycle dealerships. So I ended up in Santiago, and I located a dealership that I felt through my research would take care of my needs, or hopefully take care of my needs, and that was Motor Mania, and that's in San Miguel in Santiago. So with that, that's where I went and started looking at bikes. My first choice of bikes, actually I had three choices of bikes. The first one was a Honda 300 CRF CC. Problem with that was it was not available in Santiago or Chile. The next choice was the KTM 390. The problem with that was, first off, I sat on them and they were too tall for me. As far as I'm concerned, if your feet aren't flat on the ground when you're sitting on a motorcycle, then that motorcycle does not fit you. That's just my own personal opinion. So it was narrowed down to the next bike, which is a Royal Enfield Himalayan. I had one in Thailand. I bought one there that was in pretty bad shape actually, but I spent a month dialing it in and was very, very happy with it at that point, and put on another 28,000 kilometers there with that particular bike before I went back to Southeast Asia. So my choice was narrowed down to the Royal Enfield Himalayan 400cc or 411cc bike in a what they call a forest green. With that, I'd like to go into some of the things that I was looking for and the reasons why I chose that bike. Back with you here. One of the major reasons that I ended up picking the Himalayan is because I'm familiar with that particular bike. I've had one before, I worked on it a lot. So I think that's a real strong thing that you need to look at when you're looking at buying a bike, is are you familiar with the bike? Are you familiar with the mechanical aspects of the bike? Can you find parts for it? Can you fix it? The issues with the bigger bikes, as far as I'm concerned, is number one is the cost. You're spending a whole lot of money that could possibly be spent on the trip itself. Number two is the electronics. There's so much electronics on these newer and bigger bikes that if you're in the middle of nowhere, such as deep into Patagonia, and you're trying electronics go bad, you're pretty much screwed. Whereas with a bike that's a little bit simpler, the situation might turn out to be a little bit better. That's one of my thoughts, one of my philosophies, when purchasing a bike, is if you know the bike, you feel comfortable with the bike, and if something goes wrong, there's a good possibility that you think you can fix it, and that's important. So the next thing I want to talk about is bike registration. And this in Argentina is an issue, but in Chile what I did was I had the bike registered legally in my name. And I'm going to touch on another issue with that registration that is called the Padrón. We'll talk about that later, because it's very important that you have the electronic Padrón. But like I said, we'll touch on that a little bit later. So the important thing is if you're going to be riding South America and you're going to be crossing borders, is the fact that that bike legally belongs to you. Because if it doesn't, and you leave, as an example, you leave Chile, and then you try to come back into Chile, and they will confiscate your bike. So you're not only out of your trip, you're out of a lot of money that goes along with that. So if I can just summarize some of those thoughts. Is the opinions on bikes when I was looking at bikes was the fact that a lot of people thought that the Himalayan was pretty much junk. Well, I don't agree with that, since I've had two of them. The other issue is, as I just mentioned, the cost and the complexity of the bike. That is something that you really need to think about, in particular if you're going for a long trip and you don't know when it's going to end. And the other thing that I felt was important for me was the experience that I had with the bike and the comfort level that I had with the bike. To me, I'm not the most experienced rider in the world. I mean, I have ridden over 400,000 kilometers at this point, but nonetheless, I'm going into terrain in South America that I've never dealt with before. So you need a bike that you feel comfortable with, and you need a bike that you think is going to take you where you need to go. And then the other issue that people talk about is, do you need to buy a used bike or you want to buy a new bike? Personally, myself, on this particular trip, I wanted to buy a new bike. A new bike that I was familiar with once again, and I knew that there were dealerships that I could find that if I needed parts, I needed oil filters, I needed chains and sprockets, I could probably get those. So that's an important thing to consider when you're looking at a bike. Personally, myself, looking at it again, I think I would recommend buying a new bike if it fits in your budget. So we'll move into some of the other issues that I want to talk about, especially those that were in episode 1. So with that, I'm going to take a tea break. That's not a pee break, that's a tea break, and then I'll get back with you. Thank you. Back with the bike purchase. I think I've summarized most of the reasons why I chose the bike I did. The other thing that I'd like to conclude with regards to the bike purchase is, if you are in San Miguel or Santiago there and you're looking for a bike, I'd highly recommend Motormania. The lady that I dealt with and the people I dealt with there were fantastic. They even let me use the shop to install my new boxes, as well as new electronic gear that I wanted to wire in, and I did it myself. So anyhow, there's a big shout out to Motormania in San Miguel, Santiago. The next thing I want to talk about was starting the trip. What's important when you're going to start a trip like this? What I have learned is research. Research and pay attention to what other people that have done it are telling you. This is one thing that I failed to do. I failed to do proper research for the trip, as well as I didn't pay attention to a gentleman that I know back home that's a world experienced adventure traveler, and he's ridden all over the world. And when I mentioned I was going to Chile and Patagonia, one of his first couple things that he said, Chile is going to be very expensive. Thinking back on it, I thought, well, and he says very expensive, how does that relate to, say, the countries that I've been in Southeast Asia? Did not take that in consideration and found out that Chile is very expensive. The other thing that he mentioned about Chile is the wind. I'm not a person that does real well in consistent, strong winds, and Chile is just exactly that, especially on my ride. Further south I went, further get to the coast, the wind was atrocious and cold, and that was the norm. So touching on those issues, I think it's important to listen to what some of the people are telling you, and that's something that I felt I knew better. The fact that I had ridden over 400,000 kilometers, I thought that I had the answers. Well, I didn't. And so I can strongly recommend that if other people that have been there are telling you something, you probably should pay attention to it. So another issue that I had in this first part was I had planned on doing a lot of camping. I had bought my camping gear, as I had done in the past. I bought my camping gear, my tent. I was set up to go along the way and camp. Maybe 4 or 5 nights a week I would camp. A couple nights a week I'd spend in a hotel. Well, even though all my maps and everything said that there was camping, from my experience on the roads that I was on, there was no camping. Very, very limited. Their idea of camping, in particular in Chile, seemed to be these cabanos. Well, it's a little small building that you rent, and that's camping to them. Well, that wasn't my philosophy. So consequently, that also added to the expense of the trip, given the fact that the average, probably the cheapest thing you're going to find was $55 a night, all the way up to $140 a night. That makes a trip very, very expensive. The other thing that I want to talk about is weight, and you'll see all kinds of videos out with regards to this subject, and even though I traveled a lot, I made the same mistake, carrying a little bit more than what I needed to carry. As the trip went on, I started to thin things out, but I probably could have done a much better job had I done the weight properly in the beginning. The next issue that I want to talk about, and it's a very, very serious issue in Chile, and that is the dogs. They have attack dogs in the cities, they have attack dogs in the country. I had one point further way down south where I had 5 dogs attack me at the same time in the middle of a city on the street. And Chile does not seem to care about this issue. Talking to many people, many riders experience the same thing. So it's something to be really aware of. I'm sure there's other countries, but the only other country that I rode in that had issues with dogs was Thailand, but Thailand was nothing like Chile. So keep that in mind. Be prepared. I'm not really sure what you want to carry on your bike to do that, to create a little avoidance for these animals, but they are vicious. With that, I'm going to kind of bow out here, and we'll move into the next subject. But right now, I need to have some more tea before it gets cold. Hobo Rider back with you, and it's starting to rain pretty hard here, so I'm going to bring this to close this up. Anyhow, I look forward to doing some more of these tidbits with you, giving some more additional information that hopefully will be valuable to you as from my personal experiences and mistakes that I made. With that, Hobo Rider back at you. Enjoy your day, and I look forward to talking to you again here at the end of another couple episodes with South America, the Unfinished Ride. Hobo Rider looking back at you. Cheers.